Before this story begins, let me ask you something important. What would you do if kindness was the only thing you had left to give? If stories that touch the heart, change perspectives, and remind us of humanity mattered to you? Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay with us till the end, because what happens here might change the way you see the world forever. No one noticed the man sitting on the cold bench outside the subway station. He wore a faded gray coat, torn at the sleeve, shoes cracked from years of wear, and a woolen cap pulled low over his face. People passed him without a glance. Some avoided eye contact, others tightened their grip on their bags. To them, he was invisible. What they didn't know was that this man, quiet, tired-looking, and alone, was once worth billions. His name was Ethan Blackwood, CEO of Blackwood Industries, one of the largest investment and infrastructure empires in the country. For 25 years, Ethan had lived in glass towers, private jets, and boardrooms where decisions were measured in millions and lives were reduced to numbers on spreadsheets. But on that cold morning, Ethan Blackwood had chosen to disappear. Not because he lost his money, but because he had lost something far more valuable. 3 months earlier, Ethan stood at the window of his penthouse, staring down at a city he technically owned pieces of, yet felt completely disconnected from. His phone buzzed constantly, executives, lawyers, assistants. Every call was about profit, risk, power. And yet, the room felt painfully empty. His wife had died 2 years ago after a long illness. His son no longer spoke to him, blaming Ethan's absence for a childhood filled with nannies instead of a father. At work, employees feared him more than they respected him. One night, during a rare moment of silence, Ethan overheard 2 junior executives talking outside his office. "He doesn't care about people," one said. "He only cares about numbers," the other replied. Those words stayed with him. That same week, a charity scandal hit the news. One of the foundations Ethan funded was exposed for misusing donations. His name trended online, paired with words like heartless, greedy, out of touch. For the first time in his life, Ethan questioned himself. When was the last time I truly helped someone, without expecting anything in return? That question haunted him, so he did something no billionaire had ever done in his circle. He shut down his phone, handed temporary control of his company to his board, withdrew a small amount of cash, and walked out of his own life. Ethan decided to go undercover as a poor man, not as a publicity stunt, not for research, but to feel life again, to understand people, to understand kindness. That's how he ended up on that bench, hungry, cold, and alone. By the second day, reality hit him harder than any business failure ever had. No one smiled at him, no one spoke to him. Shop owners shooed him away. A security guard told him to move along as if he were a problem that needed fixing. His stomach burned with hunger, but pride stopped him from asking for help, until he heard a small voice. "Mom, he looks cold." Ethan slowly lifted his head. Standing a few feet away was a young girl, maybe 8 years old, holding her mother's hand. The girl wore a thin jacket, slightly too small, and her shoes had tape near the sole. Her dark eyes were gentle, curious, not afraid. Her mother followed her gaze and stiffened. "Lily," she whispered, pulling her closer. "Don't stare." "It's okay," the man said quietly. His voice cracked more than he expected. The mother hesitated. "I'm sorry," she said politely. "Are you okay?" That simple question, "Are you okay?" hit Ethan harder than any insult he'd faced. No one had asked him that in years. "I'm managing," he replied. The woman studied him for a moment. She was in her mid-30s, exhaustion etched into her face, but her eyes were kind. She carried a worn grocery bag, nothing fancy, just bread, milk, and a few vegetables. After a pause, she sighed and reached into the bag. She pulled out a sandwich. It was wrapped in plain paper. "We don't have much," she said softly, "but you can have this." Ethan stared at it. A billionaire who once spent thousands on single meals, now frozen by the kindness of a stranger who clearly had less than him. "I can't," he began. "You can," the girl said firmly, holding it out with both hands. My mom makes the best sandwiches. Ethan took it. His hands trembled. Thank you, he whispered. The mother smiled. Come on, Lily, we'll be late. As they walked away, the girl turned back and waved. Ethan watched them disappear into the crowd, and for the first time in years, he cried. Over the next few weeks, Ethan stayed in that neighborhood. He slept in shelters, ate donated meals, and learned what it meant to survive instead of dominate. He saw how the system failed people quietly, how one bad month could destroy a family, how kindness often came from those with the least. And he kept seeing them. The woman and her daughter. Her name was Maria. She worked 2 cleaning jobs, one early morning, one late night. Her husband had died in a factory accident 3 years ago, leaving her with debt, grief, and a child to raise alone. They lived in a tiny apartment with peeling paint and a broken heater that worked only when it felt like it. Yet every time Ethan crossed paths with them, they smiled. One evening, rain poured hard as Ethan huddled under a store awning. Maria and Lily rushed past, soaked and shivering. Wait, Ethan called. They stopped. You'll catch a cold, he said. Maria laughed softly. That's life. Without thinking, Ethan removed his coat, the same torn, thin coat, and held it out. It's not much, he said, but you need it more than I do tonight. Maria hesitated. We can't take that. Lily tugged her mother's hand. Mom, please. Maria finally nodded. Thank you, she said. You're very kind. Ethan shook his head. No, you are. That night, Ethan slept colder than ever, but his heart felt warm. Then tragedy struck. One night, Ethan returned to the shelter to find Maria sitting on the steps, her face pale, Lily asleep against her shoulder. What happened? He asked. Maria's voice broke. I lost my job. The company shut down. I don't know how I'll pay rent. Ethan felt helpless. For once, money couldn't fix things, not without revealing who he truly was. All he could do was sit beside her. You're strong, he said. You've survived worse. I don't want my daughter to grow up afraid, Maria whispered. I want her to believe the world can be kind. Ethan looked at Lily, and in that moment, something inside him shifted permanently. 2 days later, Ethan disappeared. Maria worried she'd done something wrong. Weeks passed. Then one morning, a letter arrived at Maria's apartment. No return address. Inside was a check large enough to cover her rent for a year, and more, along with a note. Kindness is never forgotten. You gave without knowing who I was. Now I give back, not as repayment but as gratitude. Confused and shaken, Maria tried to trace the sender. She never could. Months later, headlines exploded. Billionaire CEO reveals undercover social experiment. Ethan Blackwood stood on a stage, no longer hidden, speaking not as a tycoon, but as a man changed. I went undercover to find meaning, he said. What I found was kindness, real kindness, from those who had the least to give. He announced massive changes to his company, fair wages, employee support programs, housing initiatives, and a new foundation run transparently by community members. Then he paused. There is a mother and a daughter who reminded me what humanity looks like. They will never know how much they saved me. In the audience, Maria watched the broadcast on a small TV. Lily looked up at her. Mom, she said, is that the man we gave the sandwich to? Maria covered her mouth. Tears streamed down her face. Yes, she whispered. That's him. A week later, a knock came at their door. Ethan stood there, clean, confident, but with the same gentle eyes. I wanted to say thank you, he said, in person. Lily hugged him without hesitation. Maria smiled through tears. You already did, she said. Ethan shook his head. No, this is just the beginning. And that's where this story leaves us, with a reminder that kindness doesn't require wealth, status, or power. Sometimes it's a sandwich, sometimes it's a smile, and sometimes it changes everything. If this story moved you, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs hope today, because you never know whose life your kindness might save.